This is Kaylee Copeland with Equine Information Source, and today I am here with Julia Albrand and Mackenzie Jay. Julia Albrand and Mackenzie Jay have both been passionate about horses from a young age. With the goal of turning passion into a career, they both made their way to the University of Guelph's Bachelor of Bioresource Management degree program, where they majored in equine management. Julia first began working for Schleisse Saddlery Service when she completed a research project with the company during her undergraduate degree. From there, she completed an internship with Schleisse during her summer break. Following her graduation, she returned to Schleisse Saddlery full-time and now works in the office as a clinic coordinator, scheduling saddle fitting appointments, and as a certified saddle ergonomist, completing in-person saddle fitting appointments with horses and riders. Mackenzie became involved with Schleisse Saddlery during her undergraduate degree as well, when she completed a marketing project in collaboration with the company. Upon graduation, she immediately began working full-time with Schleisse as a client relations representative, where she worked in a variety of departments within the company. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
How often should horse owners be checking their saddle fit?
For young horses or horses returning to work after some time off, we recommend that you check twice a year at minimum. It does go up if the horses are doing a lot of exercise and they're moving up in their training quite rapidly. You do want to keep an eye on how quickly your horse is developing muscularly, and if there are any significant changes, to check the fit. Once you have an adult horse and you're kind of at a level where you will be staying, we suggest having your saddle checked at a minimum of once annually.
How can long periods of time off of work impact saddle fit?
Well, it's just like us humans. When we go to the gym, we build our muscles. When we stop going, we lose that muscle definition fairly quickly. So horses that have had quite some time off, we recommend that if you return to riding now, that you do have your saddle fit checked and confirmed that everything still fits correctly.
How can improper saddle fit affect your horse?
If saddle fit is poor, long-term damage can occur to the structures. So we are talking about nerve damage, the very infamous hunter's bump, and kissing spine. So there are some very serious conditions that can be developed if saddle fit is not addressed at some point or another in the horse's life. So we really recommend that you stay on top of it and you don't wait until it becomes a big problem.
How effective are half pads when it comes to mitigating the effect of a poorly fitted saddle? Could they lessen the physiological impact of an ill-fitting saddle, or do they risk causing greater damage?
Generally speaking, with a well-fitting saddle, you shouldn't need more than a thin cotton pad, and that is just to protect the leather from the sweat from the horse. So if you have a well-fitting saddle, a half pad should not be necessary. However, if you have a young horse or you're hoping to use one saddle on multiple horses, there is a time and a place for a half pad there. So in any way, we always recommend that a saddle fitter does give you that recommendation on how exactly to use the half pad, whether or not shims are required. And if you are using a half pad, we recommend that you make sure this half pad has a gullet channel. So when you flip it around, you want to make sure that there's actually a cutout in the center, that it doesn't close in the gullet of your saddle even more. Because a lot of the time, if we have a saddle with a gullet channel that is too narrow, the horse will hollow away from that pressure along their spine and their nuchal ligament. So it's very important that whatever half pad you do choose does have a gullet channel cut out in the middle. And the other time that you should not be using a half pad is if the saddle is too narrow, because if you're adding another layer underneath, it's like putting another sock in a shoe that is already too tight. So if the saddle was confirmed by a saddle fitter to be too wide, or you're using it on multiple horses and it was adjusted to your wider horse, then using a half pad can be okay. With a young and growing horse, sometimes a half pad can be a good interim solution.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see horse owners make with regards to their saddle fit?
A lot of the time we hear that people purchase a saddle custom built or custom made for their horse, and then they are under the impression that the saddle does not need to be fit again. That is a very common misconception. We touched on this a little bit earlier when we talked about, being out of exercise and returning to exercise. Horses change physically throughout their stages of life with and without exercise, with nutrition, with training. There are many factors that come into play at how the horse's musculature develops. So it's very, very important that even though your saddle was perhaps built for a specific horse, that you do get it checked regularly. Even if your horse is an adult horse, like we said earlier, and is at a training level and will stay at this level at a consistent level, they may not change drastically, but you still want to have a minimum of once annually. You want to have that saddle checked. You want to make sure that the wool, whatever panel material you have, whether it's foam or wool or another material, that is being checked for any hollowness or any holes, because it will migrate away from pressure. So a lot of the time when horses don't change a ton, the panel material does change. We have a lot of hollowness under the rider's leg, where the seat bones are as well. So it's very important that you keep everything nice and comfortable for the horse.
Another thing I would say is a mistake that people make is that they don't seek out outside help, or they don't make the effort to educate themselves as well. Even just going on and doing some research on your own is super helpful and will broaden your knowledge in itself, regardless of if you do get a saddle fitter out. As much as we recommend that once a year, it is important to have your own base of knowledge as well, so that you can participate in the conversations and recognize those signs, because as we are going to link you some resources as well to look at, but just seeking out that information so that you can have an eye for if things are starting to become ill-fitting, that you would be able to recognize that before it gets even to the point of bad behavior, like what we mentioned previously.
If you could offer viewers one piece of advice right now, what would it be?
I think what we would like to sort of let you know is what Jochen Schlese, the owner and founder of Schlese Saddlery, always says to us. He says, you don't know what you don't know. And it really is true when it comes to saddle fit. I think both Mackenzie and I, when we first started getting involved in the company and really spending time on learning about equine physiology and how saddle fit comes into place, we encourage you to continue seeking out the research and following the research, and keep asking questions, and don't be too hard on yourself when you realize that the equipment you are using currently may not be optimal for you or your horse. But now you are heading in the right direction, you're investigating further, so you should be proud of the process and not too hard on yourself if you didn't know in the past.